Good evening, everyone. Father Scott and Dr. Harris here. 81 folks currently in the way, in 82 now. I'm going to go ahead and get started. We also record this, so for those of you who are watching this not live, thank you for taking the time to watch the recording. We believe in the spirit of transparency and community, and I'm happy to have these quarterly town halls as a way to keep you involved and in the know and asking questions that are pertinent to your daily life at TMI. So thanks again. Again, Father Scott and Dr. Harris here to respond to your questions. In advance, I'll tell you the topics we're going to be covering tonight, just so you know where we're headed. We're going to talk about academics, of course. We're going to talk about COVID. We're going to talk about tuition. We're going to talk about emergency response. We're going to talk about wellness. We're going to talk about Panther Park. So those are the topics, in addition to some opening and closing comments that Dr. Harris and I will make. And feel free to put your questions in the chat. If we have time, we will answer those. We try to keep this under an hour, ideally. And I would ask that you ask clarifying questions or follow-up questions. And then we can, if we don't address those, if it's a new topic or something we just don't have time to address, our commitment is to do our best to respond to you, the person that asked the question, and get back and answer that. So we're not dodging anything. We're just trying to honor your time and get as much information in front of you as possible. So thank you again for your time. I'm going to start off with some introductory remarks about our accreditation, which we're really excited about. Last week, or now 2 weeks ago, some peers of ours from ISAS and SAES were in town for our accreditation. TMI is accredited by two associations, the Independent School Association of the Southwest and the Southwestern Association of Episcopal Schools. We are proud of both of those organizations that we're a part of. It's important to us to have the Episcopal piece in SAES, and it's important for us to have the independent school accreditation from ISAS. Those accreditations happen jointly, and they happen every 10 years. So this is a big deal for independent schools and Episcopal schools that are accredited like us. And so we had our 10-year accreditation. We'll get a full report this spring, and then the bodies, the committees within those two associations that are the standards committees that vote on renewing our 10-year accreditation, that won't happen until the summer. But they did give us an initial exit summary report, which was spectacular. As a matter of fact, we received 7 commendations and 3 recommendations. Normally that's a 3-to-3 split or a 4-to-4 split, or sometimes even a 2-to-5 split with more recommendations. It's pretty unheard of to receive 7 commendations and 3 recommendations, but we're special. And so we're proud of that. Those commendations were very affirming of who we are and our commitment to raising great human beings and having high academic rigor and high character. The commendations were around our school culture, our school pride, our resilience over the pandemic, and our ability to be flexible, amongst other commendations. Our recommendations were around things we already knew, which is really encouraging. Things that we as an administration are already working on. So when the bodies reflect back to you things you already are working on as far as making our school better, that's really encouraging. The recommendations were, for the most part, summed up in 2 areas. One is our facilities. We were built in the 1980s for a much smaller campus and a different community than we have today, and we need to address our facilities, and we know that. And the board and our team is working on a plan to address facilities, so that's great. And then the other recommendation is really around programming opportunities, both middle school and upper school. So what are the opportunities to differentiate in the upper school and the middle school, whether that be with the way we do curriculum and pedagogy. It's different for a middle schooler than it is an upper schooler. Opportunities should look different for a middle school and an upper school. We are proud to be a 6th through 12th grade school, and the culture that we love of being a 6th through 12th grade school is great, but there are opportunities to differentiate those 2 programs. And we are leaning into that and looking at ways to really support our middle schoolers with some really intentional middle school programs. And then lastly, we're looking at things like the bell schedule and graduation requirements and how we adapt and making sure that your children, my children, are really prepared for success today. So great report from ISAS and SAES. as we are proud of the things they praised us on and aware of the things that we need to work on. And we will report back to you more fully when we have the full report from those two groups. Dr. Harris?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Father Scott. I'm happy to see all of you in 2022. We are busy in the schoolhouse. It seems like we just started, but no, we're looking toward the end of the year. So for those of you that have older students, we are celebrating some traditions with which you may be familiar. For those of you that have younger students, we are excited to introduce them to TMI traditions. We are in the middle of course registration. We are in the middle of making sure that we continue to look at ways to deliver our academic program when we may not be able to be here in person. Let me pause and thank you for being flexible. I came to you during our last town hall, which was shortly after we had the water main break, and we are always fully transparent about our infrastructure issues. And I had a commitment to you that we would find a way to continue to deliver instruction regardless of whether or not we could be in person. And we did that last week. I'm very proud of our students, your students, who logged on, who reached out to their teachers when they didn't have Wi-Fi. I'm proud of our teachers who said, I don't have power, but I was able to go to my car and connect to my Wi-Fi to let my students know what they could do during this time to have some asynchronous instruction. And many of you know that I left Texas for a couple of years, and I'm always reminded of the grit and resiliency that we have in the Lone Star State, and your children, your families are no different. So I want to thank you for your flexibility. Know that we remain committed to the highest academic standards, and we know that when children are resilient and we continue to move forward in the face of adversity, that's not just preparing them to receive instruction, that's preparing them for life. And that is what you trust us to do. So there are questions around missed days of school and what we are going to do to make up for those lost days. Father Scott mentioned ISAS and SAES, our two accrediting bodies. And one of the things that's important to know is that they don't charge us with having a certain number of days. They are focused on our program, how we deliver the program, what the TMI experience is like. So unlike in maybe some public schools where there are 180 days that are required and no one tells you what those days should look like, here we focus on the content. So we're continuing to do that. We're not in danger of losing our accreditation because we've missed days. And we have a plan to continue to move forward, and we're doing that. Our teachers are pretty savvy in terms of how they make up for lost time, and they're able to give different assignments. They're able to think outside of the box during the day. And that's one of the benefits of working at an independent school, is you get to do that. You're not tied to some sort of statewide course syllabus that you need to follow every day that tells you this is what you should study today and this is what you should study tomorrow, and all sixth grade teachers in the state of Texas need to be teaching this essential knowledge and skill set on this day. That's not what we do. So they're able to continue to make sure that we are delivering the TMI program. One of the things that I thought was quite interesting about last week is that there were days when our peer schools were off, and we continued to deliver instruction. We understand that it was challenging for some of our families and our teachers to have power outages, to have Wi-Fi outages. And we said, if you can be here, be here. We've missed enough time and we understand that. So I just want to thank all of you for being flexible and making sure that you could support your students in that way last week to make sure that they had all they needed to be present when they could be. So thank you for that. Father Scott.
Great. The next topic is COVID related, and in particular the questions that came in. This is probably one of the topics that got the most questions in the topics I told you we were going to address. And in particular, the question is about masking and what is our mask policy going to be going forward. I'll say this at the outset, you know this, there are a lot of opinions about all things COVID. It reminds me of, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And I mean, I could present you articles and science on either side of the conversation around COVID. And the reality is that some of you would agree and some of you would disagree. Doctors disagree, scientists disagree. This is a very difficult conversation because there's opinions on both sides. We need to base our decisions at TMI around what's best for our students, for TMI. The Episcopal way is via media, the middle way. And mental health is also something that's a priority for us, and a return to normalcy is important to us. Having said that, our current policy today is that we are mask required indoors, and then outdoors, obviously, it's optional. Well, we will go mask optional very soon. Our intention was to do this for this semester. Our intention was to make that decision in December and tell you all in December that we would come back to this second semester mask optional. However, Omicron delayed that decision. It was not the right decision in December to even consider going mask optional. I believe it's the right decision now. I can tell you that we are watching the numbers closely. I have a spreadsheet right here on my other screen. We track absences every single day. We track absences and why students are absent. This week alone, we have been averaging 2 people out for COVID every day. That's faculty, staff, students. So that's less than 0.5% of our community that has been out over the last 2 weeks. We have not had a day in the last 2 weeks where we've had over 1% of students, faculty, staff, or anyone out for COVID reasons, saying that our numbers are extremely low right now for COVID-related absences. So what we're doing is we're putting the choice to wear a mask back in the hands of you, the parents. It's a both and. So very soon we will go mask optional. That will be consistent with most of our peer schools geographically, most of our schools in the area. And we're doing that because that's what makes sense to us for our students. I will stand up this week and tell our students very clearly in chapel that bullying or picking on a child who chooses to wear their mask will not be tolerated. One thing that could cause us to pivot back to mask required would be any hint that students are being picked on, made fun of, bullied, ridiculed, anything negative because they are choosing to wear a mask. You have your stories and your families, and I am not going to allow our students to question that. You need to do what's best for your child. If the numbers increase on our campus, then we'll quickly go back to mask required indoors. And then I will announce that, as I said, very soon in chapel to our students. Speaking of chapel, chapel is the place where, when I talk to you all about masking policies, chapel is the place that I believe gives you all the most anxiety. All in one space together, mask optional causes some anxiety for some of you. And we believe in being together. That's why we have daily chapel for the entire school. So canceling chapel is not an option. We're going to be in chapel every day. However, if your child has a medical reason why they should not attend a mask optional chapel, please email me directly. And with a doctor's note, we will find a way for your child to watch chapel remotely in another space. That is my commitment to you. Again, if you have a child that for a medical reason should not be in a mask optional chapel, please get me a doctor's note and reach out to me, and we will support your decision. That's not going to be a decision we make for those who just aren't comfortable coming to chapel. We believe in our decision, and we believe that it's the right thing for TMI. But if you have a medical reason, please follow up with me. I also want you to know that we're thinking about residential life, how we support those students on our campus, some of which want to head home this summer. Is that possible for them? How do we do that? How do we support navigating travel for them, etc.? I'll sum up this topic by saying, as you all know, that we cannot eliminate risk, but we can reduce risk to a level that we've always known how to deal with. And I do believe in an article, a PowerPoint that I've studied and read multiple times called The Urgency of Normal. And I think that for the sake of our mental health and wellness of our students and our community, given where we are today with numbers and this variant, it's time to be mask optional. I can tell you that mental health is a priority to me. I actually was visiting with some students the other day who asked me if they were going to have to wear masks the rest of the year. And I said to them, I don't know, but I would bet that if numbers stay the way they are, we'll be mask optional sometime this spring. I'll get emotional talking about it. The joy that I saw on these students' faces at the possibility that they were going to be able to remove their masks was a joy I haven't seen in some of these students in 2 years. It is important to me that we take care of our students' mental health, and this is one way that I think we can do that, and that's the decision moving forward. Again, please reach out to me if you have any questions about that. Dr. Harris, on to course registration.
Yes. So we opened course registration on February 1st. It's open until next Tuesday, which is February 15th. For parents who are seniors, you're looking toward a very different schedule next year. But for those of you who are upper school parents and actually 8th grade parents, this is a new process for some of you. The thing I want to talk about is the questions that we have surrounding why we make some of the decisions we make regarding the AP process and the honors process. And what does that look like? And are we being transparent, and what are we not sharing? So what we've attempted to do, I think, over time, especially even in our handbook and in other settings, is to try to share with you that our teachers are considering what is best for your child, period. And sometimes that's hard to hear. We think, and I say this as a parent of 2 boys, that we know our children best. One of the things that I encourage you all to remember is that your children spend most of their waking hours here with their teachers, with their coaches, with their peers. Our teachers see them in a different light than you may see them. So when it comes to course registration and the AP process and honors, they're thinking about how successful they will be next year. And what does that look like? Does that mean an AP course? Does it mean an honors course? Would that challenge them too much? Will it challenge them enough? What are the options for your students? So we do look at teacher recommendations. That is a very critical piece. It is subjective, but one of the things that I think we pride ourselves on is our faculty, and you've chosen us. Many of you have chosen us because of our faculty. It is important to think about how they see your children, and they're the ones who know whether or not your children will be successful with the information that they're teaching, with the course load that they will be taking on the following year. We look at teacher recommendations, we look at their current grades in that subject area, and then we also look at PSAT for our older students. One of the things that we know, and I shouldn't just say we as TMI, but as educators, as the College Board has shared with us, which is the company that produces advanced placement courses, they have shared that the evidentiary sections of the PSAT are the best indicators of how well students will do in particular courses. We use that information. This is not something that we think is specific to TMI. We are listening to a national organization that has said to us, we see a high correlation between this score and success on this exam or success in this class. And that's important to us. Then there's the TMI piece in terms of the grades and the teacher X. We put that all together. And then there's a conversation. So we also don't just look at that information and have a chart and we say yes or no. Our teachers sit around and talk about how your children will be successful and what that looks like. That's how we come up with who's able to take certain courses. I think for some of you, and I'm looking at the questions here, it may seem like it's like the selection of choosing the Pope, if you will. No one really knows what happens, when they're down there and then the white smoke comes up and then all of a sudden there's a Pope. And I remember as a child asking my dad, what are they doing? What are they doing down there? And then they come up all of a sudden and the Pope has been chosen. That's not what this process is. So I just want to make sure that we're clear. We try to be as transparent as possible, but I ask for trust. When you enrolled your child at TMI, there were things about this school that you valued. We're that same school. Sometimes that's hard as a parent when we don't give you the answer that you think you should receive. We're still that same institution. So if you have questions specifically about the AP process or honors, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or even your child's teachers. They're actually the best people to tell you how your child is faring on a daily basis. And they can share with you what they think is the best fit for your son or daughter. So please don't hesitate to reach out. The last set of questions regarding academics has to do with plans we're making for the future. Are we considering expanding on our innovation design courses? Are we thinking about other programs where we involve students and alumni during the summer break, at other opportunities? And the answer is yes. There's nothing that is off the table. Father Scott talked in the very beginning about ways for us to support the middle school, upper school, having two separate identities in terms of academic programming, thinking about what's best for students. I'm thinking about the bell schedule, thinking about having other individuals come in and talk to students, thinking about the courses that are offered. Everything is on the table. What we are doing now is fantastic. How do we keep what we are doing and build on that so that the TMI experience is even greater? Can we have more students in I&D courses? We can, but that would also mean making sure that your students aren't having to choose. So I actually just met with our registrar the other day about my son, who is a 10th grader here and who is in the Corps, and he wants to go into medicine. Should he have to make a choice between taking a LET class for the Corps and taking science all 4 years? He shouldn't. Does the schedule allow him to do that right now? Not necessarily, not if he wants to continue with a foreign language, not if he has another path that he wants to pursue. So this is a great thing for me to go through as a parent, and so that I'm sitting where you are and figuring out what this looks like, and then listening to your feedback and listening to our teachers and listening to alums to say, how can we make this a better experience so that students can spend more time in areas in which they are passionate? And that's what we're doing. So that means everything is on the table. It means keeping the program we have now and adding onto it. So it's a yes and. Thanks. Father Scott, I think we've on tuition increases.
Yep. Good to talk about tuition for a little bit. Some of you asked some questions about the tuition increase. This year, it is a 3.5% increase for upper school and boarding and a 2.5% increase for middle school. You know this from life. Everything costs more right now. Everything takes longer to ship. Everything is delayed. Thank you, COVID. The effects continue to rear their ugly head. I want you to know that we love our families, and trying to keep tuition as low as possible is something that we are committed to. We limit tuition increases, but TMI still feels the effect of inflation. 7%, I think, was the last number I saw. So the inflation increase is double what our upper school increase will be. We are raising upper school tuition by half of what inflation is. I'll tell you a couple of things that I think are kind of transparent and honest with you. We are not a profitable school. We are a non-for-profit. And as a matter of fact, some years we pass a deficit budget. We make it our goal to not, but some years we have to. This year was one of those. When we went into this fiscal year, which our fiscal year is June 1 to May 31, our board approved a small deficit budget heading into this year. That was before budgets approved, we're heading into the year, and then we found out that the cost of food went up tremendously. Then we found out that our insurance went up $300,000. That's after we've already passed a deficit budget. So then we found out that everything's costing more for traveling, for benefits to support our faculty and staff. So speaking of our faculty staff, they're the reason I'm betting that you're here. You love our teachers. They're at the top of your list of the things you love most about TMI. And we have to continue to support them and pay them a salary that supports them. So my commitment to you is that we will never, ever raise tuition without having serious conversations about the effects that those raises have on our families. We're also looking at the big picture. We're doing our best to keep the tuition increase over your span of 7 years, if you're a 6th through 12th grade parent, from going up extraordinarily every single year. But we're not a rich school. We're just not, meaning we don't have an endowment that kicks us millions of dollars every year to help offset the tuition revenue. We don't. We have a small endowment. Most of that endowment is maintenance and some financial aid scholarship endowment, but we're not a rich school with deep endowment pockets to help offset tuition. So we have to do what we have to do to provide the TMI experience that you love. And a 3.5% and a 2.5% is not enough for us to balance the budget, but it's the number that makes sense to us to support you. And so that's my commitment, is we're going to look at the big picture and we're going to keep tuition as affordable as possible for the duration of your time here. But I've told you this before, our tuition revenue is about 88% of our total expenses. So tuition does not cover the total cost of delivering the TMI experience to you. Things like the TMI fund and our gala and other annual giving help bridge that gap a little bit, but tuition increase is not something we take lightly, but it is just the reality of the increased cost of doing business. I'm going to shift now to emergency response for just a second. Two topics on the emergency response. One is kind of an older topic, and one is really recent. I want to say, before I jump into the particulars of this topic, I want to say something that I believe is so true. This is a macro point. I believe that in the absence of information, human beings make up a story. So your children do this, my children do this all the time. Think about when they come home and they tell you this big, long story about a conversation they had with the teacher, or the school thinks this, or the world thinks this. We human beings build ourselves a narrative based on a little bit of information. And if we don't have information, we just tell ourselves a story that fits with the story we want to believe. So here's where TMI gets in a lose-lose. This is where I feel like I can't win. If I don't share information with you about something you're curious about, then human nature will allow your brain to make up a story. And then you'll sit at coffee with your friends, and you'll text your buddies, and you'll have an entire narrative about what really happened because the school hasn't given you enough information. This is on all topics. This is not about safety in particular. However, if I pull back the curtain and share all information with you, then chances are you'll pick that apart every single move and question why we went left when we could have gone right. So I'm not looking for sympathy, but I'm looking for an understanding of how difficult it is to sometimes share information that's pertinent and yet doesn't overshare. Having said that, I believe in erring on the side of transparency. I'm asking you to understand that I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to give you more details than I believe any other school would ever give you, because we believe in that transparent communication. But I hope that comes from from you, an appreciation for that transparency and some trust in us. Having said that, you asked two questions. One is, what happened about a month ago or so when we had a lockdown on campus? And I'm going to unpack that for you. What happened was a phone call came into our reception desk. The person on the other end of the phone claimed to be off of our campus. That's pretty important, and claimed to be off of our campus and posed a threat to our community. We immediately locked down our community. We notified our authorities. However, because the threat was outside of our campus, the authorities did not respond immediately. So, having said that, we locked down our campus. We assessed the campus. We determined that it was safe to return to classes, and we gave an all clear. Here's what I want you to know going forward. If, God forbid, we have to go to lockdown again. We met for an after-action review, which most great organizations should do, meet and discuss what happened. We met after the December lockdown and have some commitments to you going forward. In the event, hopefully, God forbid, in the event we have another lockdown, we will text you immediately, or as soon as we can, obviously, but that text is going to be vague. It's not going to have all the details you want. I have children on this campus. I get it. I understand how nervous it makes you to get a text from the school that says the school's on lockdown. However, what I want you to think about for just a second is that in that moment, you don't want me prioritizing emailing and texting you. You want me prioritizing protecting your and my children. So what happens is, and this is not casting judgment, what happens is the phone starts ringing off the hook from every parent that wants to know exactly what's going on. Well, folks, we're locked down. We're not going to answer the phone. And so then what happens, because we're a small, tight-knit community, you probably have a handful of teachers and administrators in your favorites list in your cell phone. So then you all start texting and calling your teachers or your children, asking them what's going on. Again, not helpful. We're in a lockdown. We don't want our children answering the phone. We don't want our teachers answering the phone. We don't want to bring attention to classrooms. So here's my commitment back to you. In the future, God forbid we have a lockdown, we will send you a text and say, hey, we're on lockdown, more information coming. And as soon as we can, we will fill you in with what happened to the best of our ability. We will call 911 every time, and we will allow the authorities to decide if they're going to respond or not. And I'm asking you not to call your child or individual teachers. I know that's going to be difficult for you. I have children on this campus. I'm asking you to let us keep our community safe, and then we will update you. And then my last commitment to you is that we will have an after-action review internally. And then my commitment is to host a 15-minute debrief via Zoom for all of you within 48 hours of that event. So if we're locked down, we'll do our best to communicate. We'll follow up with as much information as we can, and then we'll invite you to a town hall to unpack it as soon as we can so that you have that information. The second incident is something that happened this week, just a couple of days ago. Actually, today's Wednesday, happened yesterday. So yesterday morning, we run a shuttle. TMI runs a shuttle that goes to St. Luke's Episcopal Church, St. Thomas Episcopal Church, and then TMI. And it runs that route every morning, early in the morning. And we pick up somewhere between 4 and 12 students every single day, depending on who's riding the bus that day. Most of those students are younger because older students can drive, et cetera, et cetera. It's important for you to know that it is not uncommon for us to have guests or visitors on that bus. If a student lives near St. Thomas or near Alamo Heights and St. Luke's, they will occasionally arrange with our admissions office because they're coming out for a tour, or they're coming out for a shadow day, or they're coming out for testing. So it's not uncommon for us to have guests ride that shuttle. The practice and protocol is that the admissions office notifies the driver, these are the students that are not on your normal list, they will be riding the bus today. That's the norm. That's important that you know that. That happens on somewhat of a regular occasion. On Tuesday, a young man boarded the bus. Our driver asked him his name. He gave him his name. His name happened to be the first name of a student who sometimes rides the bus. So there was some confusion for our driver. Is this the student? He doesn't look the same, but we have that name on the regular rotation. He then asked him if he attends TMI. The young man said, no, today's my first day. He had a backpack and he was ready for school. So the driver then texted his supervisor and asked the supervisor, does this young man belong on the bus today? So far, so good, following all protocol. What we did not do right, and I'm being transparent and honest, is our driver made the mistake of leaving that parking lot before he got a response from his supervisor and started driving to school, assuming that this student was coming for his first day before he got confirmation from the school. The young man sat in the passenger side front row, right next to our driver. He had his head against the window, basically like most kids on the bus, listening to the music and zoning out. There was no distraction on the bus. There was no incident on the bus. There was no drama on the bus. The supervisor immediately responded to the driver and said, no, he's not supposed to be on the bus. However, the bus driver has been taught not to text or talk on the phone while he's driving. So he did not respond until he got to campus. At that point, authorities showed up. The young man was escorted off. I'm not sure why he decided to ride the bus. To be honest with you, I think he was not all, he was having some mental struggles, to say a very vague term. He was not, but while he was on the bus, it was no issue. It's embarrassing, to be honest with you. Again, this is me being transparent. But the breakdown was in not leaving the parking lot before the school gave the driver the thumbs up or the thumbs down. We have learned from that. We have spoken to our team. We have taken steps to make sure nothing like that happens again. But that's the truth of what happened yesterday. And again, it's embarrassing, but the reality is we're grateful to God that everybody's okay. And all I can say is we're sorry, we'll do better. Dr. Harris, student wellness.
Sure. So I want to share a little bit of the specific questions that I've received around wellness, there's a trend, as you might imagine. And Father Scott talked a little bit earlier about the pandemic and how it's affecting our students in ways that I don't think we could have imagined 2 years ago. And I have friends in schools here in San Antonio, in Texas, and in Massachusetts. They are seeing similar trends in terms of the pandemic and how it's affecting students. Things that were already issues are coming forth and they are exacerbated. And I want to share again a few questions here today, and then I will hopefully answer them in one narrative. How do you handle body shaming? Do you talk to students about issues of serious mental health? How do you handle teachers that make inappropriate remarks in class? Do teachers take in service? What are you doing to address mental health? And there are some additional language that speaks about how hard it is right now during the pandemic. And I can really answer all of these and in one narrative. So we are aware of the effects that COVID is having on the mental health of youth. I have worked with students almost 30 years now, and the things I saw when I worked with high schoolers in 2000 are very different than what I'm seeing today. We went from sex, drugs, and rock and roll to social media, driving, and now the pandemic. But those first three haven't gone away. So the first three things are still important. You now have social media that makes students feel a certain way. You have students that believe that they can say some things that they wouldn't normally say in person. You have a lot of students who are hurt, and unfortunately, oftentimes those students hurt other students. You also have teachers who are fantastic at teaching and have different curveballs thrown at them than they've ever had before. This is all new territory. I share all of that to say there's not a day that goes by that we are not having conversations about wellness, about things that we can do better. You may have noticed that we hired another member to support our student wellness team. Dr. Maritza LeBron Stryker joined us in January because we really needed one more person just so that students could have someone to speak with. But going back to the ISAS and SAES recommendations, this brings up the question of our programming. And it is great for us to sit in chapel every day and worship together. There are also opportunities that we need to create to be more intentional about having students in smaller groups. If every single day we are being lectured to, or we're only focused on what is going on in AP Bio or what is going on in Spanish or global studies, we're not talking about how we're feeling. We're not utilizing our advisors to the best of their ability. We're sitting once a week in a small group, and we're missing out on an opportunity to make connections. It is best for your children to talk to their friends about how they're feeling and for you to have one more point of contact at this school. So we're thinking about our advisory program and how often students are in advisory, how much they're engaged with other adults, how much they're hearing from students who are going through what they are experiencing. They don't have a lot of time to do that right now. I talked about course registration and this huge push for AP and honors, and oftentimes the questions I get all have to do with rigor and time in class and rigor and time in class. But there's another side of that. If we expect for our students to be resilient, if we expect for them to be kind, then we can't just teach AP Bio and world languages and global studies. We literally have to talk about what it means to be a great human being. You can be smart, and that's great. But kindness and belonging to one another, those are important. And that's part of the reason that you've sent your children to TMI too. So one of the things I was charged with when Father Scott hired me was to find a way to look at our academic program, knowing that we're a college preparatory school, and to think about a balance. How do we make sure that students are ready for college, but that they're also ready for life? And that we partner with you to make sure that they're just good human beings. And in order to do that, we have to look at our programming. There's not time right now to sit down and say to students, let's talk about how you're feeling. If we do that, someone is going to reach out and say, have you taken away a day for my student to prepare for the advanced placement US history test? We have to find a way to do both and. So we're looking at all of that, looking at ways to create opportunities for smaller groups. Right now, we are having middle school meetings. If you are a middle school parent, you probably heard about this. And Father Scott and I, along with Father Ben, have had some big conversations with students, and now we're going small. So Dr. LeBron Stryker and Dr. Fletcher and his team, Lisa Condry, our school counselor, and they have actually broken the students up into groups. They're meeting with sixth graders specifically to talk about life in sixth grade. Sixth grade students have not had a regular year of school in 3 years. And I put quotes around it, but I shouldn't. And the last time they were in school without masks, without social distancing, enjoying all of the things that make school school was when they were in third grade. If you pause and think about that, that was a long time ago. That was the last time they didn't have to think about school being different or activities being different. We have students here in sixth grade who were remote for the last couple of years, and now they're in person. And they're so excited to be in person that oftentimes they forget about how you treat people when you're not sitting in front of a computer. So in addition to teaching, we are doing some very basic things that have to do with being a great human being, setting expectations, talking about behavior. What does that look like? And we're dedicating more chapel time to how we treat one another, period. Right now, I have a few teams that are working with a consultant, looking at our advisory program, looking at our bell schedule, looking at the administrative structure. Do we need more support? There is nothing that is off the table when it comes to supporting our students, but we have to be deliberate. So having a speaker come in and speak to 600 or 500 students to say, here's what you should do, is not something that has in the past shown to be the most meaningful for students. Having someone lecture to them and not having them participate or get to share how they feel or what they think is not something that we think will pay long-term dividends. So it shouldn't be a one and done. So that means we have to do something different versus having a speaker come in, introduce him or herself and say, let's talk about body shaming and why that's wrong. We think we will be more impactful if we have 8 students with their advisor in a room and they're specifically talking about how they feel and what things are like for them on a daily basis. And the schedule does not allow for that right now. So we're in some talks about making some significant changes, reimagining the way our academic program looks like right now, because if nothing else, the pandemic has shown us that the social piece is just as important as the academic piece and the rigor. So allow us some time to find the balance of being the college preparatory school that we are and raising great human beings all at the same time. Father Scott?
Dr. Harris, February 16th event, you want to make a plug for that?
Thank you. My team, the wellness team, and I have been working with the CEC to partner on various events, but in particular, this year, we're partnering on ways to raise resilient children. And you see me looking up in the sky because we have a really great name for it, but what it really means is how can we partner together to make sure that your children feel supported at home and at school. So last semester, Father Ben and I facilitated a book talk called around the book Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. If you're familiar with her, she has an entire series of books all about daring and being in the wilderness and what that is like. And we're following that up with a panel discussion. So all of the members of the wellness team, and I hope I don't leave anyone out, but our admission director, Aaron Hawkins, of course, Dr. Stephen Fletcher, who is our Dean of Students, and Lisa Condry, who is our counselor, and Dr. LeBron Stryker, who is a new student support assistant, Lucy Adams, who is our director of academic support, and Stacy Smith, who is our nurse, Fred Counts, who is our dean of faculty. All of those individuals will be on a panel on February the 16th, which is next Wednesday, here in the refectory, and asking questions that have been pre-submitted. Whether you've read Dare to Lead or not, if you're just a parent and you care about your child, feel free to come and show up. Again, they will answer questions, but I'm certain that that will spark other conversation. wonderful thing, I think the best thing about independent schools and the most wonderful thing that we have is our relationships with one another. So we can sit down and talk about the things that we can learn from one another and the things that we can do better to support students. So please come out next Wednesday. Again, we will be in the refectory, and I'm getting a note about braving the wilderness. So if you've read Braving the Wilderness or Dare to Lead, you're right. Braving the Wilderness was the book. Thank you for that correction. Braving the Wilderness was the book that we read in the fall. Whether you've read it or not, come one, come all, 6 p.m. next Wednesday in the refectory, and I hope to see you there.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Harris. We will make an effort to record it. Technology generally works on our side. It's been good tonight. We'll make an effort to record it, but I can't make that commitment right now. We'll do our best. The last topic is around construction of Panther Park. Really, the topic is drop off and pickup. I want to say that I recognize that drop off and pickup is, for some of you, continues to be longer than you would like. Here is the plan for drop off and pickup. For one, Panther Park construction starts this spring. We have a contractor, we have a signed agreement, and it's off and running this spring. This may come as no shock to you, but it's hard to get supplies in for the drainage and concrete and pipes and stuff that we need to do the project. So that's what's delayed the start of the construction of Panther Park. For those of you who don't know what that is, Panther Park is an area of with some pickleball court, some outdoor seating, some covered area at the drop-off and pickup location, including a new drop-off and pickup curb, which will make it more aesthetically pleasing and comfortable for your children to wait while you're in line. Specifically, or more macro about all things pickup and drop-off, as Dr. Harris said, we're looking at a bunch of ways to try and help this situation get better. For one, we're looking at the bell schedule, as we said a couple of times. There may be a day very soon where we go to a different start and end time for middle school and upper school. All things are on the table going forward. Again, the best way for you to expedite your pickup time, drop-off's not an issue, but the pickup time of your child is to talk to your child. I like to joke and say that we have exceeded in making TMI a warm and welcoming environment because your children don't want to go home at the end of the day. They'd rather stay in the amphitheater and hang out with their friends, or go to the cafe and get a smoothie, or go to the pit stop and have snacks while you're waiting in line, frustrated with us because your kids aren't there. So it's very important that you communicate with your kid. I'm going to pick you up at 3:45 or 4 o'clock, or I have sports today. So that will continue to be the best way to expedite the drop off and pickup process for you, will be to communicate with your children. We're not a lower school that says, if you're for every minute after 4 o'clock that you're here, we're going to charge you $1. We're here. We want you to come. We don't want you to leave your kids on my front porch till 6 o'clock at night, but know that you don't have to be here at 3:31. You have a window there, and talk to your children and find a solution that works for you and for them, so you're not waiting while they're getting snacks. But I am excited to open Panther Park for you very soon. Dr. Harris, anything you want to add before I go to closing comments?
Yes, there was a question in the chat regarding February 16th and whether or not students are invited. They're not, mainly because we believe that when parents are visiting with faculty, wellness team members, we're able to be much more transparent. So I remember my mother talking specifically about grown-ups and their conversations. This is a grown-up conversation. I think we can be much more transparent when our students aren't present. At this point, no students, but hopefully you'll be able to take some nuggets home that will help you in your conversations and interactions with them.
Great. All right, I think we have addressed in real time most of the questions you put in the chat, either directly to you that asked them or to those that sent the general messages. If you have follow-up questions, please know that we continue to be available to you. We don't turn off our phones and shut off our email until the next town hall. We are here and available to answer your questions. As I said, we'd rather communicate and be honest, so that there's no building a narrative of something that's not true. We want to be transparent. A couple of closing comments. One is that in the recap that's going to come out soon of this meeting, is going to be a couple of links. One of the links will be a sign-up opportunity for Stars Over TMI. George Zachary is our parent coordinator for volunteer sign up for STARS. It takes a lot of folks to help pull off the gala. It's a wonderfully fun and enjoyable evening. Hope you'll plan on coming. But the email that will accompany the video of this night will include a sign up genius, even for little chunks throughout the evening to help get involved in STARS. And I know George Zachary would appreciate you joining his committee and volunteering. Also, a link will come out with our annual survey. We send a survey out every year about this time, late January to early February. This is our way to learn and get better. We would love for you to fill that out honestly and quickly so that we can gather that information and do our best to learn and grow. The survey link will be included in this as well. And in closing, I'll just say that I hope you appreciate the transparency that these town halls provide. Again, I don't know of another school. I talk to my peer San Antonio schools every other week. All of the heads from San Antonio independent and Episcopal schools Zoom every other week and collaborate and support each other. They have struggles and questions and things that we all discuss that we have in common. I don't know of another school that is transparent as we are and allows these type of conversations, and we love them. We pull back the curtain and we hope that you appreciate that. We are not perfect, but we're pretty darn special, and I hope you appreciate that. I'll close with a quote that was given to us by the accrediting team in the exit interview. This was told to them by one of our middle schoolers as they were giving our commendations and telling us what we do well. One of our middle schoolers said to the group, "Even if you don't want to, everyone belongs at TMI." That was a middle school student's perspective on life at TMI. Everyone belongs here, even if you don't want to. So with that, I'll remind you that I'm grateful for you. We're a special place. You make it special. I appreciate the 52 minutes you gave us tonight. I hope it was a good use of your time. Reach out with any other questions. I hope you have a wonderful night. We love you and God bless. Bye-bye.